Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining our Cambridge Science for the Victorian Curriculum webinar today. My name is Marcus Maculitis and I'm the Education Resource Consultant for the Western Victoria region here at Cambridge. Before we make a start, in the spirit of reconciliation, Cambridge University Press and Assessment acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Throughout this webinar, you'll be able to type questions in the chat box, which we'll be monitoring throughout the presentations. Or if you'd prefer to wait until the end, you can ask any questions during the Q&A session with our presenters and also our lead science publisher, Sarah Fabris. I will also be detailing the availability and pricing of this new science series after the Q&A session. Our Cambridge Science for the Victorian Curriculum second edition author team includes 3 very passionate educators, and we're very lucky to have all of them here today with us. Firstly, we have Tori Shaw. Tori has worked in both government and independent schools for over 20 years and has been an assessor for the VCEE and IBO, and also co-authored our Cambridge VCE Biology series. She's currently the Head of Science at Kingswood College in Melbourne. We also have Sarah Chuck. Sarah has taught 7 to 10 science and VCE biology for almost 10 years. Sarah has been a VCEE assessor, an STAV council member, and is currently Head of Science at Kilbreda College. Having taught in an all-girls context for most of her career, she's very passionate about increasing female engagement in STEM. And we also have Erin Checkley. Erin has taught science and mathematics across years 7 to 12 for the past 12 years. Transferring from a career in physiotherapy, she discovered a passion for curriculum development through studying her Master of Education at the University of Melbourne, and with a strong desire to build students' critical thinking skills. Erin is currently teaching at Ballarat Clarendon College. Thank you very much, and I will now hand over to Tori.
Welcome, everybody. Lovely to have you here. We're going to get started straight away, and the agenda that we'll be working through this afternoon is we're going to have a look at how Cambridge is going to make your life just so much easier by looking at how you can implement some of the new content descriptors. And Sarah's going to take us through that, and in the context of disease. Then we're going to have a look at how to integrate the scientific inquiry skills into your work and how Cambridge makes that super easy, because we all know that is so important at the moment in science. So the lovely Erin will be taking us through that one. And then you'll come back to me to have a chat about setting up your students for VCE Success and how Cambridge can help you with that. And we'll also have a bit of a chat about the Cambridge platform, because it's very impressive and very amazing and we can't miss out on that. So we'll get started. I just thought before I hand over to Sarah, we'll just have a quick chat about how the curriculum has changed. So the Victorian curriculum has moved from, we know, 1.0 to 2.0, and there has been a new strand that has been put in. Now, the cool thing is that this is a strand that we've all been interacting with and dealing with in the curriculum version 1.0. And that's the science as a human endeavour. So it was always there, but to highlight the importance of understanding where science has come from, the history, how science is involved in society, they've pulled it out and popped it on its own as a strand. You'll notice science understanding and science inquiry are there as well. And Erin will talk to you a little bit more about the science inquiry when she takes us through her presentation. So the other thing to keep in mind is the content descriptors. They're much more detailed than they were in the first version of the curriculum, which is fabulous because you know now how far and how deep to go, makes it so much easier to teach. There are still elaborations there for you. Remember, they're not assessed. They're actually to help guide you through different ways that you might approach covering the content descriptors. So there's an increased focus on sustainability, and also the role of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in understanding our country and the role of science and how we approach science. So that's another awesome addition to the second curriculum. Just to whiz through the textbooks, showing you the contents page. You can see here, this is the Year 7 contents page. Water's gone. You'll notice Simple Machines is in. Simple Machines used to be an elaboration, but they've pulled that out and popped it in as a content descriptor now. So it's something that we all need to cover, which I think a lot of us probably did anyway because it was so much fun. But that's always lovely, having some more fun stuff in there. Year 8, you'll notice there's the electrical circuit stuff that used to be in Year 9. So the little bits of chopping and changing has all been taken into account, obviously, writing the textbook. Here's Year 9. You'll notice there's the waves and transfer energy stuff that used to be in Year 8. And generating electricity is a new focus there for Year 9. When you have a look at Year 10, so all the new content descriptors and the expanded content descriptors are all encompassed in that as well. So I am now going to hand over to the lovely Sarah, who's going to take you through how you can implement some of these new content descriptors, how Cambridge can help you do that, and she's going to use the context of the new content descriptor around disease. So handing over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Tori, and thank you everyone for coming to see what our textbook is looking like so far. So I'm really excited to share with you our new chapter on disease because it is my favourite topic to teach at VCE Biology. And so this chapter sort of has been written from that perspective. So what's suitable for a Year 9 student, but it's really going to prepare them for Unit 4 Biology if they choose to go on and study that, which we hope they do. So I'll be running through how we've addressed some of the new content descriptors for the immune system, and I'll be sharing how I use the textbook and accompanying resources in my practice. And just something to keep in mind that even though I am showcasing content from these particular new content descriptors for the immune system, it's an example of how all of our chapters are laid out, and all of the activities and boxes and features that I'm going to be pointing out and showing you are also in all of the other chapters as well. So to start off with, all of our chapters start with a concept map of the entire topic, which I'm a big fan of because I use mind mapping as a study technique, which I explicitly teach to students. So what I do with this is I actually photocopy it to A3 size so students can add details as they progress through the topic and kind of use it as like a running summary. So at the end of the 5 minutes at the end of every class, I'll get them to do a little bit of a recap of the class, adding details and annotating around each of the bubbles. And another way that I use this is for active recall of the content. So I'll print out one of these every few classes, and sort of as a starter activity, I'll get them to write down everything they remember from the past few classes. And this is sort of while I'm marking the roll. And then I'll get them to check through their notes or flick through the textbook and add a few key concepts that they might have completely forgotten about. And I usually get them to do that in a different coloured pen. And I find students very quickly find that the active recall and the spaced repetition helps them become much more familiar with the content quite quickly, actually, which is really important in biology. It's really a prerequisite for being able to apply their knowledge and articulate their understanding. Being familiar with the content is huge. So this is what I do in my classes, and students find that it works. And when they know something works, I find that they start to incorporate it into their own study routines without me having to prompt too much. So then jumping into the actual content, we're starting off with section 4.1 pathogens. So this is to show you that every section starts off with a number of learning goals that are explicitly addressed in the section. I take these directly from the text and I copy and paste them over to my PowerPoints so they know that everything is consistent. And they also match up with the success criteria at the end of the chapter, which I'll show you a little bit later on. Another place that you can find the learning goals is the summary PowerPoints that are provided for every chapter. So these PowerPoints, you can download them. They're fully editable, so you can absolutely use them as a basis for teaching, using them in class, but they're definitely more of a summary of the chapter. So if you wanted to use them throughout the class, you would add more detail and put your flair on it. But I provide them to students as an example of how to summarize the PowerPoints. Or take notes, because my students love being passive and taking notes from the PowerPoints, and then I'll look at their notes and they've just copied out the whole PowerPoint. So I like to provide this during revision time and sort of use it as an example of this is all you would need for your summary. And of course, also it can be really useful for those students who need that little bit of extra support, who get a little bit overwhelmed with all of the content, especially in biology, because there's a lot of content. So just reducing the cognitive load for some of your students who need that, you can provide these PowerPoints to them as well. So starting off with the different types of pathogens, we've covered the key features of different pathogens, how they reproduce, how they cause disease, and we've included lots and lots of examples. And so I think a strength of this chapter, and actually the whole text, is that it's very visual. There's lots of pictures. And in particular for biology, we're showing students different ways to represent the pathogens. So whether it be an image from underneath a microscope or a diagram, that's something they really need to know and be able to do in VCE biology. So the example given here, you can see there's a diagram of a bacterium. We also have an agar plate to illustrate how we would grow bacteria, and the fact that each dot is millions and millions of bacterial cells, because sometimes students think that one colony is one bacterium. And then it's probably on the next page, there would also be an image of a bacterium from underneath a microscope. So where possible, we've included examples from real life as well, so students can place this sort of new content into their prior knowledge, because they are coming into this topic with quite a lot of prior knowledge, just from what they've experienced with the world. So for example, try this activity would be a quick starter activity to get students engaged and to start to place the content into the context of their prior knowledge. So the try this box that you can see at the top of this screen, they all come with teacher notes and suggested responses, or tips for websites and resources that can be used to assist the activity. And also, if biology isn't your background, if you're chemistry or physics based, that's really there to support you as well. A way I like to use these try this activities is to break up a lesson. So I'm really guilty of standing up the front and talking for way too long, especially when I'm passionate about something. So when I can see students drifting and I feel like I need to re-engage them and bring them back in, I sort of get them to do one of these activities that can take anywhere between 5 or 10 minutes, as long or as short as you want. And then, of course, they can be used as a homework task. You can give them as a task for students who finish the work early and all things like that. And so, but the thing I love about the way we've written these boxes is it's not just busy work. If students finish the content early or you're setting it for homework, by the students doing these sort of activities, it's really going to further their understanding of the content. Erin will touch on this a little bit more later, I think, but throughout the chapters, we have a number of sciences of a human endeavour boxes, which really showcase the scientific discoveries or breakthroughs, and they're recent scientific discoveries or breakthroughs. We've made them highly relevant to the content, and we've tried to include as many Australian examples as possible, just to highlight the role that Australia plays in the international scientific community. And also, I believe that, students can't be what they can't see. So just showing them all of the opportunities for STEM careers in Australia, I think, is really important as well. I'm really guilty of sometimes skipping over these boxes because we have a huge curriculum and not really enough time to cover it. But sometimes these boxes specifically address content elaborations in the curriculum, so they are really worthwhile looking at. So what I try and do is I try and combine it with a skill. As I said, my students are not good at summarizing. So as a starter activity, again, they come in, I'm marking the role. Their job is to read this box and write a 1 or 2 sentence summary. Tell me 1 or 2 things that you would tell someone if they've never heard about Relenza before, for example. Another strength of this text, I believe, is the number of practical activities, but also not only the number of them, but their relevance to the content. So I really believe that students require a lot of hands-on practical experience, and it's a very different skill than just going through, class and the science understanding part of it. They obviously need to develop those science inquiry skills as well, which is the other strand. So the practicals should be hands-on, but also minds-on. They should all have a purpose, and all of our pracs do. They directly relate to the content being taught. So they're demonstrating something that the students have been learning about, or they're developing a science inquiry skill. So all of our practicals are downloadable as editable documents, so you can change them to meet the needs of your particular students and your cohorts. Some of our practicals have videos to go along with them, which is one of my favorite things about this text. It's been highly beneficial to us for a number of reasons. And so if there's a video, there'll be a video icon next to the text where the practical is. At the moment, there's mostly videos for chemistry practicals and ones that require technical skills. So you can see here is an example of a video that goes along with lighting a Bunsen burner. And so sometimes we watch videos of the practicals in the class prior because we only get an hour for our science classes, so we're quite pressed for time. So it's good to have the students coming in sort of having an idea about what they're going to be doing. As a biology trained teacher, I find myself watching all of the chem videos because it saves me having to trial it myself. If I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm not familiar with it. If I don't have the time to, I can just watch the video. And lastly, my lab techs. My lab techs love it. My lab techs this year are new to the school, but they're also inexperienced with high school practicals. So for them to be able to watch a video to see what's required, rather than just trying to set up a practical by reading the method, they have found this really, really useful. Spread throughout each of the sections are quick checks. So they are just 2 or 3 questions for students to apply their knowledge or just signpost the important parts of the content. So here you can see a screenshot of the online interactive textbook. So this is where students can check their own answers if you have that feature turned on, but you don't have to if you don't want them to have access to the answers. They're also able to rate their confidence and flag areas of concern for the teacher. So this is great because it can be immediate feedback for the students and obviously for you as well. And also, I think it's really worth mentioning, if you ever need to leave a class for a relief teacher, I want you to know that all of the answers are embedded in the text that students read. We're not assuming any knowledge outside of what's in the text, so there shouldn't be any confusion around that with students. And of course, there are teacher answer documents for everything that you can download. So the second section of this chapter, I won't get to the rest of the sections, but the second section covers non-infectious diseases, which surprisingly is something students struggle with or they haven't really thought about before, exactly what a disease is and the difference between an infectious and a non-infectious disease. But they find it really interesting and quite relatable. So there's lots of examples in this section as well, and lots of opportunities for student-directed exploration. And here we have an example of a visible thinking routine. So they're embedded throughout all of the chapters as well. And this is an example where we've embedded some data analysis into it, not just to address parts of the curriculum, but we've recognised that data analysis is an area of need for many students. I know it's a weakness for my students, the graphing and, analysing graphs and data. So where possible, as I said, we know it's a huge curriculum and not enough time to cover it. So wherever possible, we've tried to sort of combine skills together to be really efficient with your time. This is an activity as well that you could spend as much or as little time on as you want. This content elaboration is very similar to a Unit 4 study design dot point, and we've covered this in a Did You Know box. So some of these Did You Know boxes are quick and interesting facts about parts of the content, whereas others like this are a little bit longer. And sometimes I'm not super confident covering Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, especially in a way that's meaningful. That's just not an area that I'm super confident in. So we have had our textbooks reviewed by an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and gender diversity education specialist to ensure the cultural safety of the texts and the activities within them. And so in the screenshot, you can see that there are reputable resources here to support you that have been put together by a Torres Strait Islander contributor to support you with delivering any of the First Nations content within our texts, and they are downloadable in a Word doc. Okay, so to finish off, I wanted to highlight just all of the practice questions, tests, quizzes, and things that are available for you to use as is straight away. Or of course you can edit basically all of them. So many of the questions, you can use them as formative or summative assessment. This is a screenshot of the questions at the end of every section. So at the end of 4.1, we've got questions, at the end of 4.2, questions, and so on and so forth. All of the command terms are bolded and they're in order, of Bloom's order. So we've got remembering all the way down through to analysing and evaluating. They can be downloaded as an editable Word doc, or you can, as you can see here, assign them online through the platform. We've also got many worksheets spread throughout the textbook, all downloadable and editable, and all of them are highly relevant to the content. So as long as the students have the textbook or reading the textbook, they are able to do the worksheets. You can use them as tests, practice tests, revision, set them for homework, whatever you want. Then at the end of every chapter, we have a set of review questions as well. We also have downloadable checklists with the success criteria. And as I mentioned before, the success criteria match up with the learning goals, as well as the particular questions in the chapter review that address the specific success criteria. I give my students quite comprehensive revision outlines, just so there's sort of no excuses. They know exactly what they need to know. So I like to download this, and then I add in all the other things we did, all the practicals, all the extra resources I gave them along the way. So I use the chapter checklist as a basis. We also have quizzes spread throughout the chapters. They are all auto-marked, so you don't have to mark them. They are all done for you, and you can pull data out of those as well, which I'll show you in a second. You can also see here underneath the chapter checklist, we have a set of data questions for every chapter. I think Tori or Erin may mention it later. I obviously don't have time to get into it. And I would also love to talk more about our STEM tasks. So every chapter has a dedicated STEM task, but then this webinar would be 2 hours long if we could say everything we wanted to say. So I'll leave that there. Tests. We have pre-made tests that are ready to go that you can either assign online or you can download them and edit them for your class. You can also make your own tests by choosing the questions that you want. So there's a screenshot here of the platform. You can go through and search for the questions on specific pieces of content that you want. You can add them in and you can build a test that suits the needs of your students. And as I said before, if you need to modify assessments to suit different learning needs and learning abilities or have streamed classes, this is a really, really quick way that you can make multiple versions of the same test. Lastly, every chapter has a pre-test and a post-test, so you can give them to students and then pull the data from those to see the growth of your students. So that would be looking at this line graph here that shows the pre-test and post-test results for each student. I find these come in really handy around reporting time or parent-teacher interviews. I have that up and I've got data there that I can speak to straight away. You can look at individual students and see which skills or learning goals they achieved and which they're still working towards. So really, really specific as to what they were able to do and not able to do with regards to the curriculum. And you can also see as a whole class, you can see the percentage of students who are able to achieve a certain success criteria and those which still need work. And so at Year 9, if you have Year 9 exams, you sort of have an idea of what you might need to revisit come exam time. So if you're using the online platform, there's so much here for you and your students, as well as so much data that you can pull to save time when it comes to reporting on outcomes. So I think I've spoken for long enough now. My students get sick of me talking and you're probably sick of me talking now as well. So I think that I'm handing over to Erin now. But again, thank you so much for listening and for being here.
All right. Thanks to Sarah for sharing her approach of how she's integrating some of the new disease content and highlighting so many great features of the textbook. I'll try not to double up too much. I'd love to really specifically focus here on how we can embed the science inquiry and have a brief look at the science as a human endeavour material. I think as educators, we can sort of appreciate how important these topics are, and we generally want to teach them well. Like, we want our kids to fall in love with science, to develop those skills that are going to set them up for further study or even careers in science as well. But sometimes curriculum documents or school level plans can sort of address these things in they're either too vague to be useful, or they're so prescriptive that it can be really overwhelming. So I'm hoping to sort of show you today how we've gone about building in the science inquiry curriculum, and how easy it is to sort of weave it within all the science understanding strands as well. So this slide is just here just to sort of show you how the Victorian curriculum has changed. Tori's already touched on this, but version 1 on the left there and version 2 on the right, you can see inquiry still sits as a standalone strand, but that science as a human endeavour also has been separated out into its own strand. But before teachers sort of panic and think, oh no, now there's an extra strand's worth of content, it's really just been moved. So I think a lot of the science as a human endeavour material can be addressed within the discipline-specific substrand focus chapters. So our bio chapters, chem, earth, space, and physics as well. And we know that VCAR are putting an increasing focus on inquiry skills, even in Unit 3 and 4 exams. So there's a big impetus here for us to build these skills and sequence them right from early on as well. The first thing I really want to note is that most of the content specifically addressing the inquiry strand can be found in Chapter 1 in each year level of the textbook. So Chapter 1 is consistently named Science Skills across each year level. And I'm not sure how your school sort of likes to structure their unit planning, but some schools, you know, might dedicate one double period a fortnight to an extended prac, or some schools do like a little unit at the start of year 7 about, you know, thinking like a scientist and lab safety and stuff like that. And I think these Chapter 1 across each year level could be hugely beneficial here, but I really see their value as chapters that you can keep coming back to throughout your other topics. We know that discipline-specific knowledge is what underpins our critical thinking skills and our inquiry skills, and that they're better when they're not taught in isolation. So the way I sort of see it is you're working through Sarah's disease chapter, or maybe the motion chapter, and you can keep referring your students back to Chapter 1, saying, let's refine your scientific methodology here. Let's have a practice at structuring a hypothesis really clearly for this prac that we're about to do. Let's come back to that CRAP test to assess and evaluate some of the secondary sources that you might be hunting down for that homework task I've set for you. So the thing I really love is that these chapters, these Chapter 1 across each year level, is that they're really rigorous. They use a consistent scientific method flowchart across the 4 year levels, which means you're not sort of teaching a really watered down approach to the scientific method in year 7 and then having to have students unlearn that, I guess, in preparation for VCE. So on this screen here on the left is a little snip of part of the scientific method flowchart for year 7, and on the right hand side the year 10 one. So when I say the same flowchart, I mean the same steps, the same colour coding. What's actually in each step is sequenced and sort of increases in complexity of the language as you go up the year levels. And here you can see what I mean about the colour coding that sort of pops up throughout the chapters as well. So this is taken from the Year 7 Skills chapter, and it's showing how the steps of the scientific method can be sort of mapped to the sections of a practical report. And that helps students sort of see, oh, okay, that process that, you know, a career scientist uses, that's what I'm also following as well. You know, that's how I can present my findings. So the best bit is we've also got annotated exemplars in each text as well. So full prac reports at Year 7 and Year 9, like the Year 7 one you can see on screen there, and scientific posters at Year 8 and 10. So they're sort of scaffolds for the students. They show them how to format them, what to include. And here's an example from the Year 10 one as well. So we're showing students how to lay out that scientific poster. We've formatted to be consistent with VCAR's expectations for Unit 1, 2, 3, 4 science subjects as well. The inquiry content and some of the other data analysis stuff that we've sort of got scattered throughout, it's got a pretty strong mathematical bent. It's been written to align with both the Victorian maths curriculum and also to use consistent language with Cambridge's maths offerings as well. So in fact, it uses the same learning platform. So given the crossover with how many of us teach maths and science, a lot of teachers might already be familiar with it too, which is great. And my anecdotal experience of teaching junior science and maths, and also the feedback we get from VCE teachers, a bit like Sarah was saying earlier, is that you want students coming in with those really sound skills in how can I record my data, how can I display it and analyse it properly as well. So we're explicitly teaching them things like constructing tables, constructing graphs at Year 8, and then take it up a notch once we get to Year 9 and we're looking at lines of best fit, relationship between variables, you know, extrapolating outside your data set, correlation and causation. So some skills that are going to really build in a sequenced way. And then there's worksheets that support that skill development as well. So they're editable. You can download those, tailor them to differentiate to students at their point of need. There's tiny little graphs like histograms next to each question number that are sort of a really subtle way of indicating the question difficulty. So that makes it easy for teachers, but yeah, nice and subtle for students. At the end of each chapter throughout the textbook, there's chapter review questions, but then there's these dedicated data questions as well. So again, these are from that disease chapter. They're divided into those Bloom's taxonomy verbs. So they've got some questions for students to apply, to analyse and to evaluate, which sort of supports that incremental skill development as well. And then sort of scattered throughout all the content chapters, we've got some opportunities for space practice. So repeated exposure to those principles of the scientific method, opportunities for data analysis through things like our quick check questions, our try this activities, practicals, and the making thinking visible tasks as well. So with the separation, with the refinement of those substrands under inquiry, they sort of pulled evaluation out on its own away from process modelling and analysing the data. So that means there's an increased focus on evaluation as a separate skill. So that's about critiquing your experimental method, identifying potential sources of experimental error, interrogating the validity of your findings. So we've addressed that in a couple of ways. First of all, the discussion section of almost every prac across the series is split into discussion analysis questions and discussion evaluation questions. So you can see the analysis questions are more focused on things like identify the maximum and minimum readings or identify the trends, whereas the evaluation questions are really honing in on experimental procedure and asking students to kind of think reflectively about what they've done. To support student in answering these, we've also been really explicit within the text about showing how to structure a scientific discussion and how to split it into those two areas as well, really signposting it as a separate thing from just analysing the data. And the other thing to support our evaluation of data is I love these. There's some annotated examples of student work, and they place side by side the student work, and then next to it, they're showing where these real life examples, where have they compared to the expected results? Where have they discussed the limitations? Where have they suggested future improvements? And that really helps kids, I think, to sort of see, not just be told what to do, but to see a kind of an example pitched at the right level as well, I guess. And I won't hover too long here because Sarah touched on our pracs, but here's an example from a Year 10 one. This chemistry prac here, monitoring reaction rates, has some specific equipment set up. So there's really clear diagrams, you've got your videos, and you've got all of those teacher notes and tips and answer sheets for the pracs as well. Plus those editable downloads of the prac as well. So cull this certainly to suit your needs. Maybe you're getting students to focus on just reading the method and writing a hypothesis, or maybe you're removing the materials and the method altogether, pre-filling it with experimental results, and then just getting them to do a data analysis task where they practice writing the discussion like we talked about in the 2 sections. The pracs throughout the whole series, they're structured to align with those exemplars that we've shown in chapter 1. So you could even get your Year 10s, you know, you finish a practical with them and then you say, refer back to chapter 1. I want you to set out what we found in this prac as a scientific poster. So the scaffolds are really there for you to draw on. Something else that I think is really worth acknowledging in the curriculum restructure is that cross-curricular priority, I guess, of learning about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures. And I know I've sort of focused mainly on inquiry skills, but I do just want to make sure that we're touching on science as a human endeavour as well, and particularly this Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander focus. Whilst we certainly weave this into this strand through the chapter, through these science as a human endeavour boxes, did you know, explores, it's also something that we address in text. You know, we're trying not to just pay lip service to these content descriptors and chuck them as kind of extra research tasks. In Year 7, we start the whole textbook talking about how science involves different ways of knowing, about how knowledge is constructed, and acknowledging that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspective and the influence it's had on the development of modern Western science. So like Sarah mentioned, all of this content was externally reviewed, which means we've got a lot of confidence in it, and you can too. So I think that's about all I really needed to say in terms of inquiry and the science as a human endeavour. I'm really passionate as a maths and science teacher for making sure that this has been really rigorous, the science inquiry skills, and that they're going to be beneficial for your students as well. So setting them up for VCE and further study. So I will throw to Tori because, good segue, she's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. What I love about working with these beautiful people is it has been so much fun, and I think it's totally come across, and you'll be seeing what I see, and that is the love that Sarah and Erin both have for science and how they've put themselves into the textbook and they've made it for them. They've made it so that they can use it. They've made it with all the exciting bits and bobs that they'd like to have in their classroom, and all the activities that they want to share and enjoy with their students. And I just love hearing them talk about how much they enjoy science and sharing their love of science. So I'm sure you saw that too, and now I'm rambling and I haven't even started my bit. So we'll have a quick chat about how Cambridge can help you with setting up your students for VCE Success. As Sarah and Erin have both said, there's so many little things that this resource does to prepare the students beautifully for moving into senior science. One of the things is obviously the command terms or the cognitive verbs that are used throughout Year 7, Year 8, Year 9 and Year 10. They're all based on what we see in the VCE study designs. So you can see here on the right is just a little screen grab from one of the science study designs, and it's the same in every study design, and that's what we've based our command terms on. So obviously the VCAA is referring to Bloom's taxonomy as well, so we've made sure that we've kept everything as it is for the VCAA study designs. That just means that as students see these terms over and over. They get comfortable with them. You can explicitly teach what they mean. When you're going through assessments, you might say, oh, this was a common misunderstanding. When you're talking about describe, it means blah, blah, blah. But this question actually says explain, which means to give reasons. So you've got to be really careful with the nuances of those terms. So by seeing them, throughout the textbooks, throughout their years in junior science, all the way up to year 10, they're getting more and more practice and more comfortable. So hopefully when they get to VCE, they've got it down what those words are requiring of them. Something that we kept hearing from people was in year 10 it'd be great to have some sort of extension material there. So you'll find in the interactive online textbook there is actually an additional chapter for year 10. An additional section rather, and that's content that is moving students towards greater preparation for year 11 and 12 chemistry. So you'll notice that extension materials based on, again, the chemistry VCAA study design. So it's a beautiful way of just giving your students an opportunity to engage with some extension material. They may not get it, they may get it, but when they move into year 11 and they're covering that material, it's the second time they've seen it, second time they've engaged with it, and you've got more chance of success. So there's a lot of opportunities in this textbook where we've responded to what you guys have asked for, which has been super fun to provide. All the way through the textbooks, wherever there are, for example, equations, that sort of thing, there'll always be worked examples. In year 10, I'm just thinking of energy transformations, motion, those sorts of things. There'll always be equations that you need to use. So it's teaching the students how to use those equations, how to identify information, plug it into the equations, work out the answer, make sure you use the units. All those things that are required in VCE are practiced in the younger year levels. And especially a lot of equations pop up through some of your physics units in year 10. So that's a nice way of practicing that sort of formatting. Also, as Sarah and Erin have both talked about, the amazing amount of information that we've got to support you and your students in practicing their data analysis skills. So at the end of every section, we've got practice questions. Those will include graphs and reading tables and interpreting information. We've got the data analysis questions. We've got the STEM tasks can allow you to produce information that can then be analysed. There's a whole plethora of information everywhere so you'll probably be overwhelmed with it, but your students will obviously experience a much greater success if they've been exposed to this all the way from year 7 and practice. So keeping in mind that we're tight on time, those of you that have worked with Cambridge Maths, the platform that we use for the science series is the same as the one we use for maths, the Edgen platform, and it's fantastic. I just wanted to point out some of my favourite things because I found them super useful and really made things a lot more time efficient for me. I just grabbed this off our paid website because it's just a beautiful summary of all the things that are online for students. The image in the center there is actually like one of our widgets, and we have quite a few of these, and they allow students to interact with the material and change things around, and it animates, and it's really cool. But like these guys have already spoken about, we've got the checklists and the practice questions and the rollover definitions and all of the access to the worksheets and tests and all that sort of stuff. And obviously for students, they won't be able to access the assessment materials. That'll be up to you to be able to access those and use them how you'd like to. This is another type of course report you can get as well. You'll have fun. There's so many little things you'll learn, and certainly getting a Cambridge person out to take you through all these things and do the exploring with you, so you can make sure you utilize the platform as much as you possibly can, because there's a lot there and it's all very cool. This is something that I think is probably, I keep saying the word cool, but the most cool. And this is the task manager. So for example, I want my students to do some work at home. And what I can do is I can actually make like a work program for them. So I will take little activities which are shown up as icons on the page, and I can drag them and set up a little program for my students. So first I want them to do the check-in questions, then I'd like them to do the intersection questions, and then I'm going to get them to do a score chart. And if they get over 70% on the score chart, then they'll follow this pathway. But if they don't get 70%, I'm going to ask them to go down this other pathway. Now, the students won't be aware that I've set up the task manager in this way. They'll just work through it, and each time they complete something, it'll move them into the next task to complete. So it's really awesome. I can see where they're at, how they're going, and they're just working through the program that I've set them. So it's a really nice way of setting several different pathways for the same class depending on their skill development. So it makes sort of keeping an eye on your students and supporting their individual needs really easy. Obviously, these guys have already mentioned too, the online teaching suite is amazing. Everything that you want is there. You can download it, you can edit, you can chop and change, cut and paste, you can do whatever you'd like to do. And as Erin mentioned, it shows you the different levels. So you can have worksheets that you cut out all the higher level thinking questions, or you can cut out the lower level thinking questions. It's up to you how you want to manage all those different things. Everything's got answers, teacher tips, websites where we can to support you. Everything is there for you, and it makes it really nice, because obviously one of the things that we all have trouble with is actually having time to do all the things that we want to do to prepare for our students and make our classes the best they possibly can be. So that's why Cambridge has tried to do a lot of this stuff for you. Just, summarizing how awesome it is, obviously it's going to cover the new course. It's not just a rehash of the old book or anything like that. It's actually fresh and new and actually written for the new course. It's been designed to take you through the curriculum in the most easy way, and there's all curriculum planners and documentation around that as well for teachers. So if you think, oh, have I actually covered this particular dot point, you can look up the planner and you can work out where that's been covered, and so you can double check that everything's going as it should. But it makes it so easy for lesson planning. The PowerPoints are there, you've got the videos, the online, offline, everything's there for you. So it really is super comprehensive and super awesome. We all love it. We've made it so that we can use it and enjoy it, and we hope that it allows you the opportunity to share your love of science with your students, and have a lot of little fun things to do along the way. And now it is time for us to go to questions.
Thank you very much, Tori, Sarah and Erin. We will now move on to our Q&A session. And for this part, joining Tori, Sarah and Erin is our lead science publisher, Sarah Fabris. So Sarah, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks so much, Marcus. And thank you again, Tori, Erin and Sarah. That was a fantastic presentation. And I think we've reiterated it a few times, but your passion for this has really shown through. And it's been so much fun working on this series and kind of delving into these new parts of the curriculum and looking at all these new activities people can get into. The disease is definitely one of my favourite parts with the biology background myself, but also definitely all of this stuff in the new Year 10 space content as well, in the new pracs. It's all, we could talk about it forever, I think. So, all right, so we'll get into a couple of questions. So we did have one here from Nellie asking how we've catered for students with differentiated work. That's a great question, Nellie, and that's probably something we could deliver a whole webinar on if we wanted to. So I guess I'll throw to you first, Sarah. Did you want to mention a few things about that?
Yeah, one thing that sort of comes to mind straight away that I found really useful is differentiating assessments particularly. So using the online platform, it's really straightforward and simple to create different versions of a test. So creating custom tests, we've got questions at 3 different levels, so basically easy, medium and hard. So you can really easily create different tests for different levels of achievement for your students. And also a really simple one is all of our chapter questions are sorted in Bloom's order. So you can easily make a version with more of the lower order Blooms, pull out some of the more complex ones or vice versa. And most of them are downloadable as editable documents as well. So you can download it, create different versions, and then pull out questions for different students and their different needs. Erin, I think, might have something about the worksheets that she mentioned a little bit earlier that she might like to elaborate on.
Yeah, I think the worksheets and also the chapter test questions, the multiple choice ones, they've all got that little histogram I mentioned to the little icon to the side of the question number, and that just sort of gives you a bit of a gauge of the level of the question, just kind of like easy, medium, hard. So that could be really useful as well. And I think all of those pre-test and post-test and the adaptive testing data that you can pull off the platform as well, you could use that to sort of inform the question levels that you're setting for your students as well. Yeah.
And I think the other way that we differentiate is giving students access to the same information in so many different ways. So if you've got a student that needs greater support, you've got hands-on activities, you've got questions, you've got try this activities, you've got explore activities, you've got content to read, you've got fun stuff and fun facts to find out about. Whereas students that might need just the raw details because they're on it already, you can set them the explore task as an extension or go and find out more about the science of human endeavour. So there's so many different opportunities to access the same information, and that really allows you to be able to differentiate easily within the classroom too. So it gives you heaps of different opportunities for what to do in the classroom day to day, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, all of you. Yeah, and look, I guess the resources as well, if you want to see any sample of those, they are all available as well. I think Marcus will touch on availability of all of our resources after the questions as well. So we did have another question that's just popped through from Nicole regarding less written content, saying that we've got low literacy and numeracy students. So if there's, I guess, looking for if we've got support around that. So that's a really great question, Nicole, and it's definitely something we're seeing a lot more of all the way across Australia, not just Victoria, in terms of literacy and numeracy skills almost holding students back from learning science concepts. So it is definitely something we've prioritised in the series this year, and we've done a lot of research in terms of how we can make that content accessible without bringing the concepts in the science down from what they need to know in the curriculum. So there's a couple of different ways that we have addressed that, and I'll mention just off the bat that we do have some worksheets that kind of go in 2 directions. We have some that specifically target some literacy and numeracy skills, particularly in year 7 and 8, so that they can get a little bit more practice with that. Or, for example, things like where they're missing really key skills in maths that I think Erin mentioned a little bit of this in the webinar, but those skills in drawing graphs and tables and the simple things like that. So there's a bit of support around that, but we also have some worksheets that try and do the opposite and avoid those skills so that they can do something a lot more conceptual. I think Tori had some really great activities in some of our chemistry chapters in the earlier years about role playing the states of matter and things like that. So where you can do these sort of interactive activities to learn things in a different and more accessible way. I don't know, Tori, did you want to add to that?
No, I think you've probably covered all the key things. I think also understanding that the textbook text itself is also like reviewed through different programs that can determine whether you're actually writing for the right age group and level and so on. So the text has been made really accessible in terms of students being able to sit and read it. So I think that's another asset too.
Yeah. And I think like coming to this, I'm someone who's taught up to VCE science in the past, but I'm currently teaching prep. So I think it's what Tori was saying. I think the text we've tried to really pitch it at a level where the advanced content is there if you need it, but it comes in a really readable format as it is.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, we definitely have, based on some feedback previously as well, we've made sure we've kind of shortened our learning goals and made them nice and concise and clear, and really just targeting kind of one skill or concept so that it's really clear to the student what the goal is and what they're supposed to learn out of that lesson. So we think that's going to be really powerful. So similar to that, Nicole's asked another question about whether there's a speaker in the interactive to talk to the students. So I guess outside of our videos, so we do have the videos that I think both Erin and Sarah might have mentioned for our practicals that walk them through so that they don't need to read the method. They can just read out, they can watch the video that reads out all the steps for them as they go through the practical. There isn't a specific speaking function in the interactive, but there is the read aloud function that you would use in a PDF. So it's worth mentioning we do provide an offline version of the whole textbook in the interactive textbook that can be downloaded. So those PDFs, if you do open that in Adobe, you can then use the read aloud function if you need to access it in that way. So that works totally fine with all of the downloadable formats that we have. Okay. So I'll just have a look what other questions we've got. So there's a couple about availability. So I'm just going to let Marcus cover those at the end. A few people have just asked about whether we have risk assessments for the pracs that we've got videos for. So yes, we are providing risk assessments for all of the pracs. The videos are obviously only for pracs that require some really technical skills and need that extra support for walkthrough, but the risk assessments are provided for all of them. So that's available in our online teaching suite. These are downloadable documents, so you can use them to kind of upload if you want to upload a prac to risk assess or something like that. These risk assessments themselves are separate to risk assess. They're just provided as an online document through our Cambridge platform, but you can download them. You can download them in Word format so that you can edit them. If you need to kind of factor them into your template that you use at your school to get things signed off, you can just copy and paste all of that over. So we're hoping that'll save you a lot of time. So there was a question around if we offer PD support for the platform. So yes, there is. As much as it's great, we have so many features in this platform, it can be a little bit of a learning curve if you've never seen it before, that we've just thrown so much at you in the past 45 minutes or so. So yes, rest assured, we do offer free support on all of that. So Marcus will touch on that at the end of what our sales team can do. But yeah, if you do book list or have a class set of our resource, we can definitely support you in sort of changing over to that and setting up your classes and everything like that. Okay, I've just checked that. I think we've got time for one or two more questions. So we've got one about what we would recommend for if there are out of field or new teachers that are less confident with delivering the new curriculum. Yeah, definitely. So that's probably, I think, a pretty common challenge that's faced at a lot of schools. Sarah, can I throw to you first on that? Mention perhaps about our teacher notes. I know you mentioned them in the webinar.
Yeah, so I've mentioned this before, but I think one of the strengths of the text is that a lot of the activities, those explore boxes, try this, all the practicals, they all have teacher notes, as well as all of the questions have answer documents as well. But yeah, teacher notes with tips on how to run the activity, suggested responses or responses that students might throw up. As well as, links to websites that you might find useful. You can even provide them to students or have a look at them beforehand. And I also, you've mentioned this as well, Sarah, but I found the videos really helpful for those pracs, like particularly in, I find this an issue at year 9 and probably 10 when I'm teaching year 10 chemistry or physics. That can start to get sort of above my level a little bit as being biology trained. So being able to watch, the pracs videos where there is a little bit more skill involved and technicality there, I found that really useful.
Yeah, perfect. Tori and Erin, did you want to add anything to that, or we can move on?
I'm all good. I think Sarah covered everything.
Great. All right. Well, I think we're just about out of time for questions. So if there is anything you've asked and we haven't got to it today, we will get in touch with you and make sure that we get an answer to you. If you do have questions that you haven't put in the chat that hasn't been answered tonight, do get in touch with our sales reps. So I'll hand over to Marcus to share their details as well.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everybody. Yes, I'll just quickly run through a couple of slides to show pricing and availability. All of our texts, year 7 through to 10, are pretty much ready. So we've just been getting some advanced copies through for our staff, but we will have all of those, the bulk stock for all of those to start ordering in the next few weeks. So yeah, it's almost August, and as it says there, they'll be available in August. So we'll just go to the next one. Pricing for print and digital, yeah, $74.95, digital only $59.95. And the online teaching suites, we don't actually sell those, but for any school that purchases class sets or book lists for the students, we provide access to all of the teachers free of charge. And as Sarah mentioned, we also provide support with PD sessions. We'll come out and run a session to walk all your teachers through how to use all of those great resources. So yeah, I'll just quickly mention that we do also have VCE science resources for biology, chemistry, physics and psychology. Please get in touch regarding those if you are interested in those. And the next slide. Yeah, so the people you should contact. I'm Marcus. I look after the Western Victoria region. Up the top left there, you've got Emma, who looks after Bayside and Mornington Peninsula. Lamone looks after the north, and Kim for the east and southeast. So yeah, please get in touch with the relevant person in your region. And basically that brings our webinar to an end. So it has been recorded and everyone will receive a link to the recording next week. For the live attendees, you will also receive a feedback form where you'll be able to select your free book that you receive as part of joining today. So on behalf of Cambridge University Press and Assessment, please join me in thanking our presenters for their contributions today. And thanks to all of you for attending our webinar this evening. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening.